Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Stacy. I'm a Reader Services Librarian here at Syosset Library, and welcome to Afternoons with the Author, featuring our author, Heather Dune Macadam. She's the author of the 2020 international bestseller, 999, The Extraordinary Young Women of the First Official Jewish Transport to Auschwitz. Here's the book. In just a moment, we will turn the program over to our author for a presentation on how 999 came to be, and a question and answer session will follow the presentation. Today's program will be held through Zoom webinar mode. To ask a question, please use the Q&A function on your Zoom. The chat option has been disabled today. Depending on your device, this option can typically be found at the bottom of your screen. Tap the Q&A option, type in your question. Either Evelyn or I will read your question aloud to Heather. So once again, thank you for joining us today, and please help us welcome Heather Dune Macadam. Heather, it's all up to you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. I'm really happy to be here. I just thought I'd show you quickly some of the international. This is the Dutch edition. I just got this box of all of these, which is so exciting. This is the Spanish edition, which I was on my Spanish book tour when COVID hit. We had just made the top 10 in Spain. This is the Catalan edition. Catalan is on the Costa Brava in Spain. This is the Italian edition. And my French edition is over on my bedstand somewhere because I'm reading it. And then I have a British edition somewhere too, which is a different cover. So I'm just going to start, and I'm going to give you just a quick view of the film. And for those of you who don't know, Edith Grossman, who is the subject of my book and the documentary I'm producing as well, she passed away in July, just 2 weeks after her 96th birthday. And so I just want to share a little bit of the documentary and then a little bit about her. And so you have a sense of who she is. And I am wearing a scarf that was hers. Cherries were her first fruit in freedom. If you've read the book, you know that. And after she died, her children sent this to me. So I now wear it whenever I do a presentation. So she's very close to me today. All right, so you can sit back, and this is about 6 minutes.
The whole tragedy starts with the girls. In my eyes, the girls were the worst. They have been the first victims.
In 2017, I contacted Edith Grossman in order to film a documentary about the first Jewish transport to Auschwitz, which she was on. That transport was made up of 999 young women, most of whom were teenagers like Edith.
I was living in a small Slovakian city. We were 6,000 citizens there, about 60% Jews, And we were in very good relations with the non-Jews. It was a real democracy.
Thanks to Edith's extraordinary enthusiasm and generosity, I ended up writing a book about the girls on her transport as well. But our first conversation was on FaceTime.
Heather, you sent me the first email I kept on. All of a sudden, Heather Dune, who is Heather Dune? And today I have, I don't know, 20 mails and your face also.
For the 75th anniversary ceremonies in Poprad, Slovakia, Edith traveled with her granddaughter, Naomi.
Listen, I am not important anymore. I cannot give to the world anything, only to tell them the story. What can happen? First thing is that everything is done in the name of God and in the name of religion. I'm sorry, I am sad, you know, I am really sad. But I don't want the people to cry how I was suffering, not that is the purpose, because other people are suffering also. The purpose is only to show the people that it doesn't bring it, the war doesn't bring any good, nothing. People are very surprised that I went so. I was sitting in Natania in Israel by the beach. There is a beautiful park. And you know, the sky was so beautiful blue, and the sea, the Mediterranean, the sea was so green, blue. And on the horizon, I saw a release, something so beautiful. And then I said to my sister, I know where God is sitting. I saw the place where God is sitting, you know, and I would like the world to feel these feelings. It's so a nice feeling of peace and of beauty. You want to see how I am giving a kiss?
Are you excited?
Edith did not live to see every edition of 999, but her spirit is imbued in every page of the book and every minute of our documentary.
What was my purpose on this earth? Was I important at all? So, I wish you a good night. You go to bed.
Thank you so much.
I'm already in bed the time that you are now. So, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Shalom.
Bye-bye.
So I had to go get tissues. I get really emotional seeing her, and I miss her so much. Sorry. So first of all, if you want any more information, you can always go to our website, which is 999themovie.com. You can email me there. And even if you've read the book, you can go to that website. We have new photographs that have come in. We had, in the book, we had about 48 photographs of girls that came from survivors and non-survivors, because families have reached out to me. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But a lot of those pictures are now on the website, or we are uploading them. I'm a little bit behind. Anyway, I just sort of, my story begins with my first book, which was called Reena's Promise. And Reena Kornreich was on the first transport. She was Polish, and her sister came on the second transport. And this is a memoir that I wrote with Reena. And in 2012, I was living in Europe, and my future partner, my future husband, is British, and we were over there in the winter, and I realized that it was the 70th anniversary of the first transport. And I also realized that I could fly to Slovakia for almost nothing, like, $30. So I went. And while I was there, I discovered that it was, the first transport was a big deal. There was a big ceremony. The Prime Minister was there, and of Slovakia, and Prime Minister Israel. And, nobody in the West really knew about the first transport. And I left, there's a memorial at the train station, and I left a list of names that I had compiled with the help of the USC Shoah Foundation. This is, I had not even thinking about writing a book or doing a documentary at this point. And one of those names was on that list, was Adela Gross. And Adela, Reena, who I wrote about, knew Adela and saw Adela get selected in Auschwitz. They were both on the first transport together. Adela had amazing red hair, so everybody in town knew her. And Lou Gross and his wife Joan. Joan was reading Reena's Promise, and she went, "Oh my God, Lou, your cousin's in here." This is 70 years later. And I was actually in Auschwitz in 2012 with the 70th anniversary of the first transport, when Joan contacted me and said, "We never knew what happened to Adela, and I'm reading Reena's Promise, and we just found out." And suddenly I was connected to Adela's family, like immediately. And Edith had married Adela's sister's brother-in-law. A little bit, yeah. So Edith is, related through marriage to the Gross family. And so I became also, connected to Edith. So Edith, when I wrote Reena's Promise, there was very little information available on the first transport. I really went with the memoir, whatever Reena told me. But there was questions that I had that once I got into Slovakia, and what is important to remember is that, I wrote Reena's Promise early 90s, right after, it's only a couple of years after the fall of the wall. So information was still quite difficult to get. And there was almost nothing was translated at that time. Now with the internet, I had much more easier access to information, and I was able to contact people more easily, and people were able to contact me. So Edith and I worked together, and one of the big parts in my book is the first 100 pages is getting to Auschwitz, because I am really, really interested in the politics of the time and why they selected girls, unmarried girls, 16 to 32. That's what really, Auschwitz, we have so much in that area, but we do not have a huge amount about women in 1942 in Auschwitz. Most of the survivors that you read about arrived in 43, 44, most likely. Elie Wiesel, 44, actually, no, 45. Sorry. No, yeah, right, 40, 44, yeah, 40, 44, sorry. I'm having a spaz out. And even Viktor Frankl, you know, these are, Edith was there for 3 years, and any of the girls who survived, 3 years in Auschwitz. It's you know, I had a survivor who's was going for reparations to Germany, and when her daughter called about doing the reparations and gave the number, the woman in Germany said, oh, there's that number, that's impossible, nobody survived that was there that one. So it is pretty extraordinary. So this is the Grossman's families. This is Adela's sister, Dutsi, Deborah. This is Edith. This is Dutsi. This is Anna and I forgot his name. Anyway, this is would have been Adela's niece, and this is George, Edith's son, and this is Ladislav Grossman, who was very, very famous writer, and in Slovakian and in Hebrew. So I wanted to talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about the stories. So the first thing that happened was I said to Edith, I've done a memoir. I want this book to be about all of the girls, or as many as that I can write about. And I was afraid she would be upset, and she was absolutely on board. She said, absolutely, we were all there. You should write about everybody, survivors and non-survivors. The Hartman family contacted me in 2012, and they lost their sisters, Magda. This is Magda, and this is Olga, and both of them were on the first transport, and they did not survive, and we do not know what happened to them. And I learned about their story after I learned about Adela's story, and the reason they're so important is because they are two stories that we will never know the truth about. And what I was able to discover through the family is a series of letters that go back and forth from Auschwitz to Slovakia. And Lenka Hertzka is the cousin of Magda and Olga. And these letters go to the family, and often the family is writing to Lenka saying, where are the girls? Do you see them? You know, I hope you are, did they get the money? Did they get the food? I mean, it's so clear from these cards, they have no idea what Auschwitz is. It's like they think that the girls are in a commissary and they are working together and they see each other. They actually say, well, tell them to write. We haven't heard from them in ages. We haven't heard from them since they left. Did Magda get the clothes we sent her? You know, they have no idea. And so through the middle part of the book, through these letters are sprinkled throughout, telling the story, and the very sad story, because many of those letters are the girls are already dead, and the family doesn't know, and they don't learn for almost a year. And when they do find out, Lenka's job is working for an SS man, and one of the head Gestapo. So she can't say anything. She can't say, you know, they're gone. But they get a postcard from friends who say Magda is with Uncle Kaddish, and if you're not Jewish, the Kaddish is the prayer for the dead. And that's when they found out that that Magda was gone, and Olga. We don't know, but we know she was gone as well. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Another one of my favorite stories is Bertha Berkowitz. So this is Bertha right here. She's very beautiful, high cheekbones, sort of a moon face. And you can just see the family resemblance. That's one of her sisters. That's her mother. That's one of her sisters. This is her brother. And this is Passover 1940. What a great photo, right? You can see the matzah, the rollers that they use for the matzah, where they mix the matzah. And this is, you know, the sad truth of the Holocaust, that 2 people out of this photograph survive. And Herschel was, his family sent him to Argentina. And Bertha was on the first transport. She was on the first transport with this girl, Pesci Steiner. Sorry. And Pesci dies in Auschwitz. She does save Bertha's life, but she doesn't make it. And Bertha, her son Jeffrey is a very, we are in contact. I'm in contact with the Berkowitz family, and he said the last time his mother was in the camp, she went to her block, and she paused, and he said, "Mom, what are you doing?" And she said, "This is where Pesci saved my life," and she stopped me from going outside and grabbing the electrical wires. So I'm having a moment and saying hello to Pesci and saying a prayer for Pesci. This, I have loads of archival documentation in the book, and that serves the story. The documentary will actually be more up to date than the book, because a book gets published and you can't change as much. And one of the most amazing things that just came in, right, is this. This is the ticket. I just got it in July. This is the actual ticket that it was in the files of a survivor of the first transport who worked for the SS in the office. And it's a copy, it's not the original, but the family found it, and they do not know how she got it. But this is it. So this actually says, that they're going to Auschwitz. The direction that they're going, the direction the train is going to go, and perhaps the most chilling part is how much luggage. And so each girl was 360 whatever the Slovak money was, and then 3,700 for the girls. And this is the charge to the Slovak government by the railway station. And this is the date, the 25th of March, 1942. And there were no women in Auschwitz at this point. They were heading that way. So some of the other documentation that we have, this is a telegram that I write about, and it's not produced in the book because it's quite difficult to see. But Dr. Konka, so Bratislava is the head of, it's the where the government is seated. And Dr. Konka was in charge of the transportation and Jews, right? He was the head of the Jewish department. And so people were sending telegrams to Dr. Konka, asking him to release the girls. So, a couple weeks before March 25th, there were notices put up out all over town saying all girls between the age of 16 and 32 have to turn themselves in for work service. And they thought they were going to work in a shoe factory. And they thought they were going for 3 months. And if they were married they didn't have to go. And then this telegram, it's Elzbieta Sternova. It's coming from her work, and it says, she has a job and she's a very important worker. And so a lot of Gentiles sent these telegrams to Konka. asking them to stop and to save the girls. And you can see here this date. It's the 28th of March, 1942. Well, she was already in Auschwitz, and Elzbieta Strnova does not survive. And there's a number of these. One of the most chilling ones is a girl who's 15, and the head of the Jewish organization in town says, she's not 16, and when you look at it, her birthday was March 25th, 1942, and she turned 16 on her birthday in Auschwitz. The 26th is what was her birthday. So this is some of the footage. I traveled in 2015, and this is sort of when the documentary started. I traveled with family members whose mothers were on the first transport, and they had survived. And many of these women never spoke about their experiences. And so I went with Ida Eigerman's granddaughter, that's her right there, Daniela, and her daughters, Sharon and Tammy. And then we also went, I went with Orna Tuckman. And Orna is from Australia. And she went to Israel after we went to Auschwitz together. So we went through Slovakia. This is in Prešov, that picture right there. And she has just found the list of her family that didn't survive in Prešov. Prešov is quite a large city in Slovakia, eastern side of Slovakia. But right from Auschwitz, she flew to Israel, and she went to Yad Vashem. And you can see, just because this is a GIF, it just keeps recycling, but I'll show you there she is. That's the original transport list, and that's her mother's name. I need to fix this GIF so it slows down. But that's her mother's name. And Orna is quite extraordinary. While we were in Auschwitz, we were filming in Block 10. Block 10 is the block where the girls were first held in Auschwitz I. Just if you're not clear, Auschwitz I is the main camp, and Birkenau was being built when the girls arrived. So they were actually in the men's camp, and it was divided. Auschwitz I, there was a wall in the men's camp to keep the women and the men apart. And then in August 1942, that wall came down when the women were moved to Birkenau. And as Edith used to say, and that's when the death camp really started. That's when the selections began. And so they, so Orna, she's standing there in Block 10, and she starts to speak, and we're filming her, and she says, she reveals that she's adopted. And she never knew that she was adopted until after her mother died. The entire Jewish community in Israel and Australia kept it a secret. And she's adopted because Dr. Mengele had sterilized her mother. And so it was just like this moment of, really, I mean, these stories, these women are such an amazing, it's just, I get chills just thinking about it, and I've worked this for so long. So there we go. That's, I'm gonna go ahead and stop my screen sharing, and hopefully you guys have some questions for me. I have some other things that I can share, and there we go. But I will leave it to questions and see if there's anything I can, you might want to see, other things you might want to see, but I have other slides if you've got questions that they may help illustrate. So I see we've got one Q&A.
We have our first question. Hi, Heather, Rosette tuning in. What a beautiful tribute to Edith. Will you be re-editing the documentary to include it?
Oh, no, I don't think so. Thanks, Rosette. We, Yeah, I did that for the memorial service. I love the FaceTime stuff, but I think it's probably really low grade footage. But she's so cute in it and I'll just say that Rosette, and I'm just going to go back, because I wanted to shorten this. Hang on. Wait, I want to do this. I'm just going to show you Rosette's mom, this is her aunt. Let's see, I'm just going to go down here. There we go. So this Rosette Rutman, sorry, that's there, and her sister. She survived with her sister Edith, also an Edith, and she and Lily, who came a little bit later. But this is Rosette's mother right there, Ella, and this is her aunt, Edith, and this is the girls in Sweden after liberation. And this, we filmed Ella and Edith, they met each other. This is Ella's granddaughter, Tamara. And I love this photo especially because this is after liberation, and there's the bicycle. And here we have, this is before the war and after the war, and there's still bicycles. And then there's this really fantastic, while I was working on the book, Rosette found this family album in her aunt's archive or whatever, I don't know, anyway, and they had all of these photos from the Red Cross. So her mother and aunts have this very unique story. They were part of a negotiation with Himmler. They were on a train, and Himmler was threatening to kill them, and they were negotiated with this. The Swedish Red Cross was trying to save their lives, and Himmler was trying to get money. And so they were on this train. There was other girls on the first transport on this train. This is Joan Rosner. And Matilda Friedman right there. And then also Erna and Fella Drenger were on this train as well. They all end up in Sweden, and these stories are just incredible. So yeah, I just love these stories. Rosette, I'm so glad you're on, because I wanted to share these, but I was afraid I wouldn't have time. So there you go.
As a slight
Hi, we have
follow-up,
question.
Rosette did say she thinks that's her mom sitting at the bottom of the picture of them being quarantined. She hadn't noticed her before.
That's right. I remember her saying that.
Wow. Okay, I have a question from Jackie. She wants to know, how long did it take you to research and write 999?
Yeah, well, the research has probably been, since 2012. But I didn't know I was doing research back then. People were contacting me and sharing stories with me. And I started gathering stories. And then in 2015, I started the documentary, and I thought I didn't want to write a book. I thought, a documentary would be way easier. Not. So in the midst of working on the documentary, I'm not really good at raising money. So, it just was really difficult. And my husband said, you have to write the book. And so I did a book proposal, and the book sold, and the book's come out, and we're still working on the documentary. Although we just got an executive producer, which is awesome, because she can do the raising of the money, and I can just work on my next book. And yeah, so yeah, the 2015 to now, and then the writing of it, I sold to my publisher in 2017, and it came out. I wrote, really fast. I said I could have it done in 9 months. It nearly gave me a nervous breakdown.
I'd like to know what your background is, that you were so interested in everything that took place over in Auschwitz.
So this is what I always say. If you meet a survivor, especially one of the first transport, and she says, would you write my story? I think you're in big trouble with God if you say no. So that would be Reena. And you know, I just, it gives my life meaning to find lost girls. And for me, these stories are truly, truly about young women who have been written off out of history because they were young and uneducated, and they disappeared and they left no trace. And I think that it says a lot about Holocaust history, that that men have owned it mostly, pretty much to now, except for Anne Frank. She's dead. You know, these I've been, you know, trying to get the world to recognize the women of the first transport since 1995, when Reena's Promise came out. Really didn't get a lot of traction. And I think a lot of it has to do with the Me Too movement, why this book has really taken off. We did an amazing, Spain, everybody was reading it in Spain. And one of the reasons is there's fascism in the government. So the Spanish are really, really alarmed by that. And all of the questions that I had when I was on my book tour in Spain were about young women. Why did they take girls? That was the focus. And it speaks to, you know, it speaks to women's rights. It speaks to human trafficking, modern day slavery. I mean, these girls were slaves. They were not sold, right? The government paid $3,000 for each girl to go to Auschwitz and not come back. They paid to get rid of them. That's how useless they were considered. It's really upsetting for me. Goes to my mission. Good question.
We have another question from Carol saying, do you speak at middle schools and high schools?
I do, yeah. In fact, I've been doing that for years. I have a couple. There's one in Montana and there's one in North Carolina. Every single year I do their Holocaust classes, and we this year we did Zoom, and well, we usually do Skype or Google Hangout. And I'm happy to, if you're a teacher and you want me to do something with your class, I'm happy to do that. I'd love to. So just contact me. You can get hold of me through the website. Yeah.
Okay. Michelle wants to know, she said, I've read many books about this horrible period of time. I had not known until I read your book what high regard the Nazis had for astronomy and numerology.
Yeah, it's creepy, isn't it? Yeah, I have a whole chapter about Himmler and his and the number 999, which I hired a historical astrologer and a numerologist. I didn't hire them; they volunteered to do it for me, and because I had a gut instinct. And what's really creepy about this is that in early March 1942, Himmler went to Ravensbrück, and he ordered 999 female prisoners to go to Auschwitz and act as guards because he was opening up the women's camp. And then there's 999 young Jewish women who end up in Auschwitz. And I just, you know, Himmler's a control freak. I didn't think it was an accident. And so I contacted this historical astrologer without saying anything, right? Just saying, you know, could you look into this? And he unpacked this. I mean, it's really extraordinary. And then the numerologist and an astrologer, the other person I contacted, you know, I gave her Himmler's birthday without saying who it was, and she came back with this really amazing reading on who this person was. And yeah, so there's a whole chapter on that, which I found, you know, I wasn't sure it was going to work when I was writing it, and my husband, who's an amazing writer, read it, and he said, "You did it." You know, it's like, because it's weird. It's like, do we really believe this? But there's a really great book, if you're into this, there's a great book called Hitler's Monsters. And And I've got it over here by Eric Kurlander. On. There we go. Hitler's Monsters. You can see I spent a lot of time in it. And he writes about werewolves and astrology and all of this weird stuff that the Nazis were into. So yeah, good question. Sometimes you have to take a salt bath after you read this stuff.
Yeah. Okay, Carol would like to know how many children were born in total from these survivors and grandchildren also.
Oh, God, first of all, I'm really bad at math, and second of all, I have no idea. And part of that is we don't actually are getting a much clearer idea of how many people survived, but we don't know for sure how many survived. We don't know how many died, and there are some of the people who survived had higher up positions. They were block elders, and what I hear is that they didn't want anybody to know. So yeah, so I don't actually know that, and yeah, sorry.
Okay, Jackie would like to know, something I found particularly interesting in the book was a section regarding the possible reasons as to why 999 girls were selected versus 1,000 girls, as well as the possibility that there were originally 1,000 girls. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so that goes back to Himmler. There was a rumor that there were 1,000 girls and one of the girls escaped. It's impossible. It's not true. There is somebody who says that she did that, but the fact is that the list, when they arrive in Poprad, Slovakia, and there's a list that is typed, and it says 999. There's actually 2 typos, so it's 997. The exact same girls, that list is retyped in Auschwitz by the SS. So the Slovaks typed it in Poprad, Slovakia. The SS type it in Auschwitz. Same names everywhere. There's not a single name missing. So that is rumor. And people say things, etc. I had somebody contact me who said, he said, my mother jumped off the train, and that's what she always said. And, it's just before she got to Poprad, perhaps. But after Poprad, you were locked into transport. The trains to Poprad and the buses, there were buses and trains and trucks and horse carts. The girls were concentrated in an army barrack in Poprad. And those were just passenger trains. And the girls were super innocent. Margie Becker actually talks about them joking and singing like the Slovak national anthem because they're going to work and they're going to support their families, and they're adults now. They're teenage girls. They're going to go be grown-ups. And they end up in Auschwitz.
Jessica asks, what has been the overall reception for 999? There is so much material about the Holocaust, and yet so much more that is unknown. Though the facts are horrific, they are necessary truths for us to hear in order to recognize the infrastructure that led to this.
Yeah, the reception's been incredible. I am super proud of the work. I've just received 2 grants. I just got the New York State Council of the Arts NIFA grant.
Congrats.
Yay, I'm a fellow.
Mazel tov.
Yeah. And I got the Royal Society of Authors grant in England. And so we were in the top 10 in Spain and Catalan. COVID has put a bit of a damper on book sales, but people needed to read during lockdown as well. And so it's been really, really wonderful. And I'm so grateful because I agree. I think it is so important especially this early material, because and especially women's stories, because women's stories have been so overlooked historically. That and you know, as I say in the book, you know, we do not know, we have no accurate death records on women. In fact, Monsi Shlobova, those of you who read the book, you remember Dr. Monsi Shlobova, her niece is in touch with me and just sent me pages in Slovak from Monsi. And she writes, she's actually written about when the girls move from Auschwitz I to Birkenau. And this is what I mean about books. Like, I can't go put this in the book, but I can now put this in the documentary. She says that anybody that was in the hospital at that time, they took them straight to the gas chamber. Hundreds and hundreds of women were killed. That is not in the Auschwitz Chronicle record, which, where is, that's like my big fat, people like to see this book. Hang on, here it is. So this is, you can tell how much I use this book. There, this is the Auschwitz Chronicle.
Oh, wow.
There, I've broken the back of it, right? And that is not listed. And she also writes about the huge selection in December. And her estimate was 7,000 and others say 10,000. If you look at the SS records, they say 2,000. And I got challenged in an interview in January. Somebody said, well, you know, because they were challenging me that I would say that. And I had written an article about it. That was it. And they said, you know, we've looked this up and we can't, you know, what you're saying is not fact. We can't fact check this because the SS records say 2,000. And I said, so who are you going to believe? The witnesses that were there, men, women, right? Men and women prisoners say 10,000 girls went to the gas chambers. Or are you going to believe the SS? Who? Yeah. Yeah. There you go. So this is really important work because we're trying to correct history. Thousands and thousands of women died and there's no record of it.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of a follow-up to Jessica's question. Michelle asks, what has been the response in Slovakia and Germany to the book?
Germany has not come out, but Slovakia, it's big. It's great. People are super excited. It's a beautiful edition. I haven't gotten don't have a copy of it yet. But yeah, it's gold. And yeah, everybody I know in Slovakia the translation. The funny thing in Slovakia is I knew the translators. Well, I knew the daughter of the translator. And so I got this email saying, you know, I'm, you know, Adriana Rektorova, and you know, emailed my daughter years ago, like, and it just like, boom. And she's done a beautiful job and really accurate. She actually caught some things that I had made mistakes on, which was really great. Cause I had, you know, I had people fact checking in Slovakia, but they, you know, you miss stuff, you just do. And so, yeah, so there was a pretty glaring error on my part, which I said something had happened in Prešov and it happened in Bratislava. And so we were able to correct that. Yeah, so it's also coming out in Czech and Polish, but because of COVID, they haven't come out yet. And the Hebrew edition is behind. So Hebrew edition, they've just finished copy editing. COVID has just, you know, stopped everything. Israel was in lockdown again, and they're just coming back to work. So.
And what language is spoken in Slovakia?
Slovak.
Slovak, okay.
Yeah.
Now, you also said that it's so popular in Spain and you were doing all kinds of press for it in Spain. Do you speak Spanish, and how many languages do you speak?
I do not, you know, I'm a typical American. Je parle un petit peu français, but I do not speak any Spanish. I had an amazing translator who did simultaneous translations in Catalan and Spanish. And oh my God, I just, we spent like 4 days like next to each other. I just adored her, and she was pregnant. Yeah, so, and I did a presentation like this, only, in a room. And it went great, it really did. I loved being translated and doing the press. I mean, it means so much when people from other countries are reading your words in a different language, and it reaches their hearts. It's so exciting. It's really great.
Anonymous asks, are you working on another book?
I am. Yep. Let's see. Well, I don't have any pictures. Yes, I just my husband and I are writing a book together, and this is called Star-Crossed: a Romeo and Juliet story in Hitler's Paris. It is a love story. It is another lost girl story, and it is quite an incredible book that will be coming out in 2022. We spent the summer in Paris doing research for it. My husband does speak French and German, and he actually is my main translator for German, at least for 999. There was nothing in French for 999, lots of Slovak, Polish, and German. So we spent the summer interviewing a 92-year-old who is the sister of the woman whose story we're writing, and it all takes place at the Café Fleur in Paris, and it is got just about every Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre and the whole eclectic surrealist movement, and on top in occupied France, and it is a love story between a Jew and a Gentile, and pretty amazing, very dramatic, and another amazing photographs we've just collected that we're just so yeah, we're 30,000 words in, and we have another 60,000 to go. Thanks for asking.
How did you get all these wonderful photos?
Oh God, it's, I'm so, first of all, I'm really tenacious, and second of all, I just think I might be lucky, but I'm pretty good at finding things, and then I just have a lot of people helping me. So 999, people have been sending me photos. They want their family members to be remembered, especially I find one of the most amazing bits, in the sorry, I'm just dropping my books. One of my favorite parts of the book is the memorial page, and to actually have photographs of girls who didn't survive, and that it's just it's quite incredible, and so yeah, that's a big part of the work I'm doing. And we were actually, I'll tell you right now, we were in Paris in an archive. We were looking for somebody else's photograph, and we had 2 boxes of photos we were going through, and the last box, we hadn't found anything, nothing. The very last box, the very last photo, there was this weird little black and white, just a little, not really an ID photo, but small, and a girl with dark glasses on, looking very hip, very cool, dark hair. And I went, who's that? And I turned it over and I burst into tears. And it was the photograph of one of the women who ends up in Auschwitz and doesn't survive, that we have her name, but no record at all. All we do is we have her name in letters, and there she was. That was her. And I just was like, I was shaking. I was just sobbing in the middle of this Parisian archive where it's completely silent. It's a really powerful moment to find somebody who's disappeared and to find their photograph. and then to bring them to the world and say, look, that's who this is. And she's gone.
I'm
Really
surprised. I'm surprised that all these photos survived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
really what I find shocking, that they weren't destroyed by the Germans.
well, these photos survive because of families who survived.
Hmm.
Or sometimes the photos were given to neighbors, and then somebody
Right.
survives and they get the photos, right? Or there's family in America where the photos were sent. So there's a number of different ways that photos survive. And a lot of times neighbors took things, and then when people came back, they were able to retrieve things from their neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw in one of the pictures you showed, that's going to be in the documentary, you showed what the town looked like.
That's Humana.
Yeah.
That's
And
fascinating.
that's an amazing story. So
Yeah.
we were, I'll just go back and I'll show you right now.
I mean, I always think of them as little shuttles, like they didn't have anything like that, but that looks like a really nice looking town.
Yeah. Humana is, it's actually quite small. Prešov is much, much larger, but I was at the Holocaust Museum. I was in my book tour in January, and I was down in DC doing an event, and I had the morning off, and I went to the Holocaust Museum, and I worked with the video archivist to see if if she could help me find some footage for the documentary. And I'm in there, and this something says home movies. I start looking at home movies, and suddenly I go, oh my God, that's Ladislav Grossman, who is Edith's future husband at 10 years old.
Oh my.
In the footage. And I literally text Edith's son, and I go, George, look at this. And I film it. I'm like filming it. And I go, isn't that your dad? And he texts me back and he goes, oh my God, that's my grandfather with my dad. And he had never seen this footage of his grandfather who died in the train station when the train was bombed, because Ladislav loses 22 of his family members, if you recall, in the train station. So, and this is the Gross family and the Grossman family, and all of that footage with the horse, the full nursing, all of that is home movies that one of the Gross family, who was the Grosses were very wealthy. They have a big lumber business, and he lived in Chicago, and he had come back. It was 1938. He came back, and he had a camera, and he filmed. And so so we have these incredible home movies, and the girls on the first transport are too young. We can't tell who they are because they would have been about 8 at the time, 1938. Ladislav is about 10, and so it's very hard to tell, and plus it's black and white. You can't really tell which who's who, but I'm sure they're there. We just don't know which ones they are.
Fascinating.
We have a question from Lisa, who this is a follow-up to when you were talking about your next project with your husband. What is it like writing with your husband?
Well, I'll let you know when we're divorced.
We don't want that to happen.
No, we edit each other all the time. And he makes my writing better, and I make his writing better. So we both really respect each other's work, and I think it's going to be fine. He's basically we're each writing sections, and then we'll put it all together. And he'll read my sections, I'll read his sections, and then I'll come back and I'll change everything he's done and put back the way it should be.
What's your husband's name?
Simon Worrell. Simon. It's very cute. He better be. So thank you so much, everybody. This has been wonderful.
Seriously, thank you, Heather. This has been amazing. I'm very excited for the documentary.
Yes. Where might we be able to find it? Do you know?
Yeah,
We're done with part 1. We are moving into part 2. Everything's a bit behind because of COVID. Archives are closed. It's pretty hard to get. If we can't get it digitally, it becomes even more difficult. So I did hire a researcher to help me do some footwork. And so I'm hoping the paperback is coming out in January, and I'm hoping we're going to have a rough cut by then. And yeah, so we will let you know, and you can let your community know.
We
And,
certainly will.
Yeah.
and you can also just do keep in mind, folks, that hang on, I'll just put this back up there in case you missed it. Oops, sorry. There we go. That, oops, that shouldn't be there. So that 999themovie.com, you can go in there and you can subscribe to my newsletter, and you'll get updates about the documentary. And you can actually see the trailer for the movie there. And if you're super wealthy and want to donate, you can also donate there. Or not super wealthy. You just want your name on the film. You can just send us 10 or 15 bucks. We'd be very happy. So yeah, but it was great. Really, thank you so much for having the library and keeping us reading, and yeah, and please, everybody, stay safe and healthy.
Same to you.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
too. And for all listeners that are at Syosset Library patrons, or even if you're not, you're welcome to come here. We do have the book on the shelves. We have multiple copies.
It's also on Overdrive. If you want.
This.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to send you this,
Oh, awesome.
the audiobook.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
thank
I love
you.
audiobooks.
That would be
Yeah.
great. Thank you very much.
Make sure that you get a free copy. I'll sign it.
Oh, thank you. That's even better.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
So once
Thanks
again,
so much,
thank
everybody.
you. Thank you all for coming, everyone. And please join us again next Tuesday at 3 p.m. on Zoom for a discussion with author Yangzi Chu, who is going to be visiting to discuss her 2019 instant New York Times bestselling novel, The Night Tiger. No registration required. And have a great afternoon, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you.